Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn Bradford, and I would like to welcome you to my Left Turn podcast. What is your left turn? Writing a blog, parenting in a different way, letting go of the old because you are aware of something greater. Left turns are choices we can all make. It's about a willingness to step into the unknown in any area of your life, to trust yourself, to risk creating or trying something new. It's about letting your true uniqueness shine. The greatest people who have lived, artists, statesmen, writers, explorers, musicians, have all been people willing to turn left. What capacities do you have that you have not acknowledged? What would your life and the world be like if you were willing to turn left? Welcome, everyone. I'm Marilyn Bradford, and this is the Left Turn podcast. And I would like to introduce an absolutely brilliant and fun gentleman, Brendon Watt, who's joining me today. And this is what Brendon wrote. I grew up in a middle-class family trying to have middle-class values until I discovered these values were not really mine. I think so many of us can relate to that. After decades of conformity, broken, unhappy, living as a single dad in a tiny room in my mother's home, along with my 4-year-old child, I asked for change, and I got it. The moment that changed my life forever was when I discovered the pragmatic tools of access consciousness. What I came to realize was each of us has an individual journey. Each of us has a different sense of the future. Each of us has a different sense of everything that's possible, but it does not mean you have to do it alone. Today, I am a worldwide speaker, best-selling author, and facilitator with Access Consciousness, a global empowerment company of 176 countries, leading classes, workshops, and private sessions that empower others to know that they are not wrong and that anything is possible, and that they are just one choice away from change. I am living proof. So welcome, Brendon.
Thank you, Marilyn. We joked about before we started, that we should just end on the bio, because I agree, that's a pretty good bio.
It's a really great bio, and it says a lot of things I'm sure people can relate to.
Yeah.
And you are living proof. So what have some of the biggest left turns been in your life, or the ones that created the most for you?
Definitely stopping drinking. 100%. That's been the biggest choice of my life, but also the hardest one. And I remember the last day of drinking like it was yesterday.
Wow.
But it was interesting because, I was coming off 12 days of drinking. I know. Just take that in for a minute.
Take that in for a moment.
But I was at a point where I was hopeless. I couldn't see a way out at all. And to be honest, I didn't think I was going to get out of it. I definitely had my doubts about myself. And I got a bottle of wine, and I was like, this is it. After this bottle of wine, I'm stopping drinking. I finished that bottle of wine pretty quickly, and I was like, well, I'll just get one more and I'll stop tomorrow, And so I walked up to the liquor store that was, a couple of 100 feet away from my house, and walked up there, and it was 3 minutes past 9. They closed the doors at 9 o'clock. Across the road from me was Whole Foods, which was open. I knew I could walk over there and get wine. And I stood there and I was like, okay, so here are my choices. And it was as if I had, for the first time in a long time, clarity and had access to my being with regards to choice. And I just went, that's it. Wow. And I just stopped. But it wasn't that, you hear people talk about, oh, I just stopped drinking and that was it, and it was easy. Oh no, that's not me. I stopped. That was the first choice, but it was, it was a journey after that, but it was that was the moment that things began to change for me.
And one of the things I love about hearing that, Brendon, is it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't
No.
like, oh, this is easy, I can do. And sometimes the biggest left turns are the ones that make us the most uncomfortable because we're following what we know,
Yeah.
which you clearly did.
Yeah. And it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it can also feel impossible. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, a good friend of mine, and I realized that even still, I had certain things that I would put in a category of impossible. If I
Right.
couldn't, if I couldn't define the path to it, or if I
Yeah.
hadn't chosen it before, it just automatically went into this category of, well, that's impossible, as kind of more of an underlying point of view. So then rather than being able to choose something, everything was about wishing for it if it was
Um,
beyond what I defined that I could have. And
right.
so even in the beginning with sobriety, I was wishing, begging, I was like whatever for it, but I kept going with it. And
Yes.
that was the thing that was different with this for me, because as an alcoholic, my life has been about quitting on myself.
Would you say more about that?
Yeah, well, it's like one of one of my one of my biggest triggers while drinking was happiness. I would get to a certain level of joy and
Mhm.
freedom and space and just presence and being in my world, that would be so foreign to me,
Wow.
and that would be, okay, this is too weird, I need to go back to the darkness that I'm so familiar with. And so whenever I was just about to take off in my life, whenever something would be there that I would launch into a different space, it would be, I had alcohol to take me backwards continuously. It was my friend and nemesis simultaneously.
I get that.
My
Absolutely.
kryptonite.
Yeah, your kryptonite.
Yeah.
So what kinds of left turns have been made possible by that big left turn for you?
Oh man, I I have uh, one of the most difficult things. Well, two of the most difficult things for myself personally is having allowance for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like actually having it, not just going, oh, I'll just avoid everything that I judge about me so I can act as if I have allowance when I don't, because I secretly hate myself. That kind of allowance that we do.
Yes, I do. I do know that kind of
Yeah,
allowance.
that one. No, like actually getting to allowance with myself and recognizing I have choice. And secondly, is acknowledging myself. It. I've had so many people over the years tell me, "Wow, that's taken some strength to get through what you've gotten through." But I've only just began acknowledging that for myself. That it's taken. I've learned one thing. I've learned about myself. Well, I've learned many things, but one of them being that I have strength. I do have power. I do have choice. I do have kindness. I do have, all of the things that I always wanted to be are there for me. And I am those things if I'm willing to choose them. And this is the biggest part for me, is recognizing that, yeah, it's one thing to be something. It's another thing to choose from that space of being, because
Yes.
you can be a really kind person, but, let's say you're a really kind being. You just are that, but you've been brought up with a lot of abuse and you
Ah,
create a shell around that kindness. then you may not choose from that space of kindness, giving you not much access to it. This is like, I've had to learn, okay, if I want to be that in the world, if I want to be that person that I've always said that I want to be, I'm going to have to start choosing that way. And with alcohol in my pocket,
Right.
it wasn't a choice.
Right.
It was a facade.
Well, you can't really engage, and I'm speaking from personal experience. You can't really
Yeah.
engage if you're indulging in a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
So,
No, you're
yeah.
just not, I was just not present at
Mhm.
all. And that's been that other thing, with talking about allowance, is allowing myself to have whatever comes up, be whatever comes up. Like, man, alcohol was so good at numbing myself from the world.
Absolutely.
And that takes a lot of alcohol when you have the level of awareness that I do of the world.
Yes.
So it's like it's I've had to recalibrate in so many different ways. Like, I've had to learn how to be with myself. One of the things for me was, I was I always wanted to just crawl out of my skin. I was never I was just creating myself as being separate so that I could be alone, while also needing other people to, it was just this continuous fight for and against everything. And, in the last few years, I've learned a lot about myself.
What have you learned, Brendon?
Well, I've learned I'm lazy.
That's not a word, an adjective I ever would have applied to you.
But let me say something on this, because it's been it just cracks me up, because I spent my life trying to prove that I'm not lazy. So, but we prove we prove the opposite of what we've decided we are.
Yes.
So if
Yeah.
you've judged yourself as lazy, then you're continuously doing in order to prove, no, I'm not lazy, I'm not lazy. But what I realized was, laziness is the unwillingness to choose beyond what, creates a comfort zone.
Yes. Wow.
So it's like,
A great definition.
yeah. So I was just like, there were different things. Like, I want to get my my book finished at the moment. I'm halfway through writing a book, and I'm pretty sure, I'll tell you what the title of this book is going to be, okay?
Okay.
How I Became an Alcoholic.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's in your face.
Yeah.
That's the
Good.
book.
I can't
And
wait to read it.
yeah, me too. And and I was like, oh, I don't have the money, and and I was doing all these things, and I was like, wow, that is so lazy.
Yeah.
Rather than going, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this done and out there into the world. So I
Yeah.
was just like, it's just the last few days I've been going, oh, there's another part where I'm lazy.
But that kind of honesty, rigorous honesty with
Well,
ourselves is amazing.
that's the other part. If you, in asking what I've learned about myself, is I've learned about myself that I'm really good at lying to myself.
Mm.
I'm really good at lying. And you could put that in the category of alcoholics and addicts, and if you're listening to this and you have, struggles with addiction and alcoholism, then if you go, that's not me, then, I was that person. I remember going to my first AA meetings, and they would be like, how do you know when an alcoholic is lying? How? When their mouth is open, and I'd be like, not true. I'm honest. And, no, I wasn't. I was lying to myself continuously, which was what enabled me to be that way for so long.
Yes.
But, you know, um, I've had to, one of my greatest mentors in this would be Gary Douglas.
Uh-huh.
You know, with having brutal honesty with self, because I always just, man, that sounded so alluring and just like, oh man, like brutal honesty with yourself, but choosing it,
Mm-hmm.
that was a whole different thing. Like actually getting honest with, wait a minute, like that's not true for me, you know, like getting honest on it. And you know, on that topic of lazy, honesty with self would be the antithesis of it.
Yes. And it's not, I think people get the idea that honesty with self is about saying everything that's wrong with you.
Yeah.
No, it's what you were talking about earlier. It's also about acknowledging you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, yeah, that part has been a journey. You know, like I always thought vulnerability was exposing all of your shit. I'm really good. If that's vulnerability,
Yeah.
I'm vulnerable.
You're
You
good
know,
at it, huh?
I'm good at it. I'll tell you everything wrong with me in a heartbeat. Well, not in a heartbeat, because it'll probably take me 2 years to actually tell you everything that's wrong with me. So if you've got 2 years to sit around and listen to me tell you what's wrong with me, then I'm vulnerable.
I love it. Well, I remember being out at the ranch for the last class, which I can't even remember what the class was. But there was horseback riding afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And I'm a very beginner, kind of getting on, and there were fighting horses and everything. And there you were, just doing these beautiful kind of circles. And I thought, wow. And it wasn't just it was also about your being. That's so cool. Brendon is really present and and just being and being with a horse and being with the riders. And it was really nice. And I meant to tell you that day, but you know, didn't get around to it, I
Well,
guess.
yeah, thank you. Horses have, you know, horses and nature
Yeah.
and the ocean and, you know, and all of that. It's like, for me, that's me. You
Ah,
know? And then it's like, and put me around people, man, have I learned to turn myself into a different creature.
yeah.
So that's been where access comes in, you know, because like if you look at even the way that the definition we have of consciousness, where everything and everyone is included and nothing and no one is judged, is having the tools to actually be able to live in the world right now.
Yes. Crazy world.
You know, because it's any of us could go out and live in a cabin and, you know, have space, but to live, you know, with people and in our world, and to also have the level of awareness that, you know, you do, is like, okay, so where are the tools for that?
Yes.
And that's where I found in my recovery was like AA was so required for me, you know, and we talked about this in another conversation about, I needed that structure. I
Mm-hmm.
needed the rules, I needed all of it. And it was so helpful for me, but it didn't give me the tools to navigate the world in sobriety, because
Exactly.
navigating the world as a sober person is very different to
Very
navigating the
different.
world as an active alcoholic.
Yes. Very different. And in fact, because I got sober through AA initially too. It tends towards the negative. Where are you selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? And access isn't Pollyanna, but it gives you the tools to know what you know and to be with things and people and, the allowance and the gratitude and the kindness and all of those things.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was also, I mean, one of the things that was really helpful for me was I could walk into a meeting and I didn't know anyone, you know,
Mm.
and so I could just, I think it was probably the first at least the first month, where every meeting I was a mess. I was a puddle, and I was breaking apart in a way that was so required for me. But it's just like no one was trying to fix me. No one was trying to put me back together. And I needed that.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of allowance in AA for other alcoholics.
yeah, and it wasn't, well, let's change this, because it was already changing.
Yeah.
It was my world needed to shatter in order for it to change. But one of the, they would talk about becoming humble, and seeing yourself basically as, don't see yourself as something great. Don't see yourself as something bigger than others. And that part may get you a little stuck if you can't allow yourself to be the greatness that you are. Because greatness doesn't come from comparison. True greatness is an acknowledgement of being. And so
think of a flower opening up. That's like a big rose opening. That's true greatness.
That's greatness, and it's unique.
Yes.
And so there were different things like that where I was, I had to, but here's what's great is all of it's included.
Yes.
So you can have, I have the tools of access. I have what I got from AA. I have what I've learned with myself. I have all of it has been a contribution to greatness. To what else?
Yes. That's lovely. That's lovely, that inclusiveness.
Yeah. Where all of it is included.
So if you were going to, I don't really like the word advice, but if someone said, well, what can I be, Brendon, or how can I take the next step, or what's important to know about getting greater or moving on, what would you say to them?
Well, I would get clear on, start acknowledging the things where you're choosing what's not true for you. And that's a bit of it's an individual journey. Like I said, that thing with lazy, that's been helpful for me, because if you don't have to judge it, so if you didn't have to judge any part of you in order to acknowledge it, in order to have a different choice, then every part of you could contribute to something greater. But it's the judgment that we have of ourselves that eliminates it. So it's like, if you could go, okay, look, in this area of relationships, I really like lying to myself. Or when it comes to money, I really don't see myself as being able to have it. Or when it comes to, family, I always give myself up when it comes to family. Okay, there's your first step. Okay, cool. Acknowledge it. And then, is that really my point of view? Or is that just me being, I could put it in this thing now because it's entertaining me, of being lazy. Am I just making this real to me because it's easier to make something real than it is to make a different choice that doesn't, match what I've decided I am.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's beautiful. Yeah.
And one other thing with that is, choice is an interesting thing. So if you're looking at changing anything in your life, it doesn't take one choice. It takes one choice to start, but the more you're willing to just go on the journey with it, to go, okay, I'm going to have something different. What can I choose and be today? What's a different choice that I could make with this? And then that first choice opens a door to more choices, which open a door to more choices. And you can start to change something, but you have to be willing to make that first choice.
Yes. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Brendon, for coming on today. It was a really
welcome,
enlightening and enjoyable conversation.
Thank you for having me on here.
Thank you so much for joining this episode of Left Turn. I wonder what embracing left turns could create in your life. what magical possibilities might show up. Remember, when you choose left turns, you are joining a group of the most creative and brilliant people the world has ever known.